most iconic global advertising companies, Saatchi and Saatchi. Andrzej is a specialist in emerging trends, media, and creative content. He'll be revealing how the power of creativity can help travel brands rise above the economic downturn. It is my great pleasure to introduce you to Andrzej Moyseowicz, Saatchi and Saatchi Strategy Innovation Director for Europe, Middle East, and Africa. Andrzej.
Good afternoon, everyone. This is very exciting because whenever you get the Saatchi or the ad guy on stage, they inevitably get to have the slogan, use creativity, rise above austerity, which sounds like a slogan you can't buy, right? And that is always a creative challenge because fundamentally creativity is about looking through a prism of optimism. And what I love to really hammer this point home as a few statistics, there has been a range of studies, as usual, each year from different travel organizations and also from independent parties who've tried to understand the role of price pressures. And what I love is that if you look across the studies and do your little Excel chart, the change in price being a key driver of decision has only changed 3 to 6 points depending on the market. And I love that. And the reason being is because fundamentally, as cliche as it seems, and as cliche as travel advertising can sometimes be, you sell dreams. You sell fundamentally dreams. Now, the neat thing is that it's who tells the dreams that has gotten quite exciting. And that's why what I want to talk about is creative innovation embracing the age of advocacy. And the most threatening thing I have to say to my clients is that we have the most democratized form of media ever. Everyone who has a smartphone in their pocket has a Gutenberg press. And when you look at 2.2 billion mobile phone, broadband contracts, 5.3 billion mobile phone contracts, 1.7 smart, you start going, everyone has their own printing press. And so if you're unable to creatively embrace the age of advocacy, it's very, very likely it's going to be hard to win in this space. So some context behind this. My background is in chemical engineering, which is probably the worst prerequisite ever to enter advertising. I was a chemical engineer for 5 years. And that meant I'm really good at making sure things don't blow up. I'm very, very good at making sure if something catches fire, it does not blow up. And the great thing about engineering is engineering teaches you not to hold ideas. You put ideas into a middle of a room and allow people to build it, because the joke we used to make is, if you don't test an idea, somebody dies. All right? Now, taking that into the creative space is actually a very powerful tool. It inherently makes you a bit vulnerable. And we have a philosophy about love marks. And it's this idea that when I talk to CEOs, and they don't really like talking about love, I go, do you want your brand to be liked or loved? And it is amazing how few times CEOs actually ask themselves that, where they say, we want to be loved and respected. And the reason why is this has a business imperative. The role of Net Promoter Scores on top-line revenue, the likelihood of a loyalty loop clicking back is part of our process of working on creative ideas at Saatchi's. And the reason why we work this way is I like looking at who's in control. So this is a great little heat map that Google did that was trying to unpack essentially when are the key moments over time and importance between TV and broadcast media on the left and search and online. And I love that heat map because that's a pretty scary heat map for any of the media agencies in the room, right? It feels comforting. I get it. If you have that big TV and poster budget, it feels nice. And the reason why it feels nice, you're like, eyeballs, lots of eyeballs. And you're comforted because guess what? Your boss, who used to have, you're going to get his job someday, what he did is he bought a lot of eyeballs. And his boss bought a lot of eyeballs. And they've been buying a lot of eyeballs for years. And you have these ROI calculations, and you're comforted by those ROI calculations because it still works. I'm not saying it doesn't work. What I'm saying is it working well enough? If your shareholders really unpacked your media budget and spend, would they be really excited about how you're spending the money? I would argue perhaps not. I would argue that there's a shift happening where you still need to have the clarity of ideas, but if there's one dare I make today is dare to avoid the cliche. This industry sits in creative cliches because marketing sits in one silo off to the side, but there's never been a moment where your own consumers can have more positive impact on your business model and the way messages are spread on your brand's or product's behalf than now. And you either embrace it or you just put your head down and spend more money. So if you're big, got great big budgets, knock yourself out. If you're small, nimble, this is the time. This is the time. And the real reason why it's the time is that if you look across the balance between heart and mind in travel, I'm a bit of a geek when it comes to neuroscience, and I love the fact that every time they do a study to see how people make purchase decisions, the rational part of the brain fires off like mad, right? You get electrons jumping all over the place, right? And the reason being is you're going, should I get that? How much does that cost? What about then? Should I leave on the Tuesday? Should I get late? What about purple parking? Right, rational. Not a single person ever clicks buy until the emotional storytelling part of their brain fires. Every time they do the study in 6 or 7 universities every year on different categories, and I love that because it is a balance between heart and mind. You have to have both. But no one makes a decision without the power of emotion. No one. No one. No one in this room. As much as you want to think yourselves, especially if you're a guy, guys are really good at this. They rationalize so far about, I thought that one through. Yeah, I was in control of that situation. My wife makes it very clear to me I'm actually never in control of any situation, but she's good enough to give me the credit to make me feel that I am. All right? And that is because in my emotional part of my brain, I need to tell that story, that I was the one who made the decision. Yes, I asserted my opinion. Yes, we definitely wanted to go to Portugal. When did she say Portugal? Oh, that's right. She said Portugal. About 8 months ago, in passing, saying, oh, you really like those custard tarts. What are they called? The pastéis de nata. You like those, don't you? You really, yeah, oh, those are good, yeah. And you like grilled fish with just a little bit of olive oil and salt. Yeah, I do like that. Yeah. 3 months pass. I'm thinking, you look really good with a tan, Andrzej. You look really good with a tan. Should we go somewhere? It'd be good to get a tan, wouldn't it? And she just plans this way because it's heart and mind, and all the data supports it. But this is the best bit, is that what you start with, whether it's your heart or your mind, depends a lot on your culture and what place you're selling. So this is some great stats that I absolutely love because sometimes they fit to stereotypes. So Americans and Germans, for example, Americans and Germans, they like to start rational. Now, Germans, you expect that. Americans, less so. They start the process very rationally. The use of guidebooks in Germany is about twice as high as any other country in Europe. The reliance of going to the public library, getting guidebooks, especially getting novels around the places that people want to travel to. And then in the selecting place, so they've planned, it flips. They become emotional. They look for emotional affirmation. In France, it's exactly the opposite. They start with emotional media and close the deal in a rational space. So one of the joys I always say is that when we come up with great ideas, you have to do both. You have to serve both the price, ease, convenience, safe side of the equation with the catalyst for someone's own storytelling. Remember, at the end of the day, travel is about bringing stories back. That is the only souvenir that matters in the world of Facebook. What is that photograph? What's that thing you ate? Remember that great drink? We went clubbing. Remember that great crash? And I love that tension because you have to satisfy both to close the deal. And the neat thing is online, don't raise your hand, please, because I'm about to do a criticism, but it's a helpful criticism. If you're an online travel operator, you still own, it depends on which market you're in, but let's say 1/3 of all travel transactions. And I would say that you guys aren't growing fast enough. You get double-digit growth because you're on a lower base, so it sounds good in the press release. You're like, yeah, we got 12% in a time of austerity. But then you're like, yeah, but you're on a base like this. So like when I go to the gym and I lift some heavy weight, yeah, on a small base because I'm weak, it looks awesome in percentage terms, but in real terms, I've only lifted another 5 kilos, right? And so with the online operators, you're competing still primarily in price and convenience and utility, which is good. It's a very important model. It makes sense to the business model. The neat thing is that there's still a huge desire for a lot of people for more humanized interaction. The real joy will happen when creative, compelling content is integrated as an affirmation step to that utility. If I was an online travel operator, that's exactly the brief I would be giving to my agencies. I'd be like, yeah, we nailed all the algorithms. We got all these big data guys who came over from Tesco. They're awesome. They did the club card stuff, and they're going to do the same magic for us. And you get comforted by that because they have a wonderful Excel sheet. They hit F9. You see the permutations play out, and you go, yes, all right. So when people make a decision, they're balancing that. Oh, that's great. And because they had 2 coffees today, they'll spend £5 more. Brilliant, okay? I love those algorithms. I'm an engineer. However, the second part of the story and the cool part of the story is what is the content that emotionally affirms that? What's the thing I'll post on Facebook? I'm not going to post on Facebook how much money I saved. I'm going to post on Facebook my excitement and anticipation of a dream. And then lastly is the sharing space. This funnel is overused and it doesn't exactly reflect reality, but the best assumption that you can state is that there's a wonderful thing called the loyalty loop. McKinsey first labeled it back in 2009 and done multiple reports on it. And what I love is that the post-purchase care has a 6 times multiplier on the likelihood of coming back. 6 times. Now, we always talk about acquisition in this industry and how little do we talk about retention, because retention is like the black arts. You know, acquisition I get. I buy your attention. I bring you in, do direct marketing. Awesome. Retention's a tricky thing because retention is less about what you said in the beginning, but what you do. And I always say that more brands and businesses have to do more than say. And this loop has an immediate impact. In insurance companies in particular, travel as well, it's actually a little bit higher, by the way, for travel. 6 times is the average. The other thing is the social content loop, which is the loop of the content that consumers create on your behalf. If you curate it, has a 56 times multiple on organic video search. What that means is just curating content created by your most passionate advocates is the cheapest way. I know all of you spend tons of money on AdWords. It's the cheapest way to rise above the parapet because no one's doing it. Google is sitting there going, why is no one doing this? Which is, if you act like a broadcaster for your brand or your business and curate that content, the impact on Google's algorithm is exceptional. So next time you type in Spain or a generic destination, you'll be surprised of how few videos show up. Because normally the videos are in isolation, they're not connected to any other content, and they're worse yet, they're not connected to Facebook and to Twitter. It's so simple to do, and it forms this loop, which means you're, again, extending your media spend. And you get all these wonderful visualizations. I don't need to hammer home all the facts you've heard this whole week, but the world is been changing. It's not that it is changing or has changed. It just is changing, which goes back to human insight. People want to buy from people, and that's why people spend so much time on the internet still looking at what other people think. Anyone work for British Airways in the room? Hopefully not. Let's see, British Airways? All right, good. All right, British Airways, I took this up 2 hours ago. All right, this is just free social listening tools, and you know what you're going to get there. A lot of people complaining, but every so often a nugget, a gem. People like to complain, especially in this country. As an American, I'm amazed at how good you guys are at complaining in less than 140 characters in a tweet. It's like there's some genetic DNA that was programmed for 140 characters and being really pissed off. And you guys do it in this country in a way I've never seen anywhere else, all right? But when you get a gem out, it's like poetry, because you're limited into that context of how do I make this relevant to other people. And I looked up the credential communities, and it was fascinating to see which communities and places it ties up, because travel is about passion. I love the fact that one of the top communities was food and music, so you expect the travel to own, but we're starting to see passions being a way of diversifying the message. And that's what you see from normal people talking to their peers. And the more brands who reflect those normal conversations, the better. And they're free tools. They're free tools. The paid-for social listening tools, I'm a massive advocate, because they're even 20 times better, because they'll find the influencers who have the disproportionate impact on your brand and business. And normally, they don't know it. A great example, if you work in the hotel industry, by the way, if you work in the hotel industry, there's this lady, famous lady, and she doesn't even know she's famous because she has no privacy settings on her Facebook. She has no privacy settings anywhere, and she travels around with a very grumpy husband who happens to be a sales director and travels all the time. And the deal he made on his contract is she gets to fly with him everywhere. And what she notices is the stitch count on the sheets. She notices when there's a fingerprint on the glass because she has nothing else to do. So she's got access to Wi-Fi and a laptop, which is like the death of the hotel industry. You have a captive audience who notices the spot on the ceiling. And then she starts thinking, what the hell is that spot on the ceiling? How did the spot get to the ceiling? And then the brain just goes. And suddenly, they are the worst badvocate rather than advocate. So one of the things you can do with social listening is you can really unpack these wonderful influencers and use them as catalysts for your brands and your storytelling. And they look, and the cool thing is the data looks cool. You got to find the neat places, because very likely some of these conversations don't happen in travel blogs. They happen in another passion point, football, fantasy football for guys for whatever reason. They talk about everything from dandruff to travel in those places. They don't even go to travel blogs. The travel guys who go to travel blogs and write, they're always about 70 years old. The young dudes, fantasy football. I don't even understand this football manager game. I understand it causes divorces in this country, but if you go to a blog there, inevitably there's an off-topic conversation about travel. And those guys cut and paste those thoughts and spread them across the interweb. So, advocates drive connections. This is, again, McKinsey, BCG, Bain, so don't trust Saatchi's, trust very expensive consultancies. They've been analyzing this, and the cool thing is if you get 10 advocates out of 100 to speak on your behalf, they talk 4 times as often, and they have broader connected social networks that listen. So one advocate normally leads to 6,000 quality impressions, and I stress quality, not an eyeball of a poster. Quality impressions, which means I listen, I absorb. But the cool bit, advocates drive purchases. Last time I've checked, there are not many charities in the room, and some of you have particularly vocal shareholders. And one of the challenges always is how to show competitiveness when you're communicating through your creativity. And one of the best way is to show that if you start tracking your advocacy index, nearly in every industry, you start seeing a correlation between the combination of expertise and populist positivity around your brand driving business results. The McKinsey study showed that an advocate has 4 times more impact per message, they say, on catalyzing a purchase decision, not purchase intent, a decision. Intent is one of these floofy words marketeers use, because purchase intent meant I thought about spending money, and that really doesn't matter to your shareholders or to your Christmas bonus. This is purchase decision. They tracked it through. And the interesting thing is that 4 times impact goes higher if that advocate has compelling content to share as part of it. And that gets me excited. That's my job. My job is to help you create the compelling content that they will catalyze and create and share, so that their advocacy is supported by something beautiful, emotive, relevant. So, people in this country spend about 10.5 hours researching their mortgages. They spend about 12 to 15 researching their travel destination. I love that stat. It gets done every year, and I still love it. You spend more time on that holiday to some resort, in Greece, than you did on that very expensive mortgage you got in London. And I love that. And that's because you're selling a different type of dream, a dream you can see and touch right there. So, a couple amplifiers, and then I'd love to take any questions, provocations, and challenges. So, 3 creative amplifiers you can take away and use right away. And the whole goal of these amplifiers is literally go back home and think, how can I be more competitive and innovative? All right, so my job is catalyzing the greatness of others, because I'm not the smartest guy in the room. I love being surrounded by the smart people, because then if I make them look good, I look good. And this is some of the tools we use to unpack that. The first one, which seems so counterintuitive, and especially after the last discussion about EasyJet, is the idea and the role of a purpose, a brand purpose. And every time I bring this up, I get people shaking their head. They go, why do you talk about brand purpose? And I have a great quote for a venture capital fund who, when I did on a purposing exercise with them, they were like, why doesn't every company in the world do this? Because immediately it clarifies the reason for being. The question I ask any of you, why would your business be missed if it disappeared tomorrow? If you are unable to answer that right now in a pithy 10 words, you do not know your brand purpose. I don't care how boring you think this part of the industry is or that industry. I don't care. I had done this with carpet cleaners, and they come up with better brand purposes than most of the big brands. They understand their reason for being. And embracing that's really powerful, because all it is about the purpose that lives on top of a set of beliefs and a set of behaviors. This helps employees understand how to live out your brand. If you're a B2B business, this is joyous because it helps that sales force understand the behaviors of the brand. It's an exercise that does take a month. It requires a lot of personal vulnerability because you have to really unpack what is it that you stand for. But I highly recommend it. And the reason being is the world is made out of glass. With the invention of Google, there is no such thing as an internal memo anymore. And the clarity of understanding your purpose will be embraced by consumers. It will be their vernacular they spread to others. Another key thing to this is a crass word, which I'm not allowed to say. I normally curse at these speeches once, but this is not the audience for it, so I'm going to prevent that. But this is another thing about creativity and purpose, which is if you want to make your agencies work harder for you, and that's consultancies, whoever, they should suffer from this illness, which comes from knowing your purpose. This illness is one that my wife attributed to me in a wonderful heated debate we had. I call it a debate rather than an argument, you noted, where she described I'm allowed to suffer this at work, but never at home. And it stands for effing high standards, all right? And I mean this. And the reason why is that when you apply that to your creativity, into your messaging, it is fantastically reductive. And if you get everyone to brace into this policy, it is so good for teams. And when you know your purpose and you apply that against it, it's hard to do the wrong thing. It really is. I know it sounds a little floofy in marketing. I'm an engineer. When I first heard it, same, but I've seen it transform businesses. The second bit is the 3 Ps of innovation. If you want to quit your job right now and become an innovation tech blogger, I would highly recommend you steal these 3 Ps and start writing a blog, because you can pretty much distill down every innovation to a business model against these 3 Ps, which is you take your business idea, the way you create value, and you ask, how can I make it more portable, potent, and personal? Those 3 Ps unlock amazing new revenue streams. Every organization I've ever done this with has either designed a new product, increased their margins, you name it, because you can apply the 3 Ps independent of discipline. So you go to your sales and proposition guy, or your R&D guy, or your product guy, and you go, how do you make what we do more portable, potent, and personal? If you meet with Google, and Google sends you this lovely big deck, I would ask them the same question. I go, oh, this is really great. You guys sound like really smart dudes. How does this make my business purpose more portable, potent, and personal? And so you can apply this against the iPod. So if you want to be really smart at the next dinner party you're at, I highly recommend that you just use these 3 Ps. So if someone says, hey, what's the next iPhone going to look like? If you want to pretend and just fake it till you make it, just apply the 3 Ps to it. You go, oh, it'll be more portable, be a tiny bit thinner. It's going to be more potent. There'll be full social media integration into the photo program. And it'll be more personal. I'll be able to have more cases and personalized screens that fleet out to the cloud. And then you sound like you actually know what you're talking about. And the main thing is it also applies to really good brand purposes like Nike Plus. So Nike, when I started running, was like elitist. If you said you're a runner, the first question another runner asked you was, how far? You know? And I'm like, I can't believe people still compete on that, right? And then Nike took the American, just do it, which is very individualistic, very Michael Jordan slam dunking, right? Very American, let's just say. And then they did something joyous. They did something joyous, and it started with Nike Plus. They democratized the idea of just do it. They made it more portable, potent, and personal. The average length of a run on Nike Plus is now a little under a mile, which I did not count as a run in my day. That's the average. That means there are people logging workouts lower than that. Now that is making Just Do It more portable, potent, and personal. So take your own brand purpose, apply the 3 Ps, and I guarantee you'll come up with new things. And then lastly, most importantly, if there's any cruise operators, I'm desperate to work on a cruise brand, because what I love about cruise operators is that people's perception, if you've never been on a cruise, is so messed up because they assume it is a floating prison, all right? That is what they assume. I must meet these people and talk politely with them at the buffet. I must engage in the rock climbing wall and surfing competition. I must sing that Take That song I hate at karaoke night. Right? It is a floating prison in the eyes of many. But the weird thing is that most operators in this space have actually totally flipped the cruise experience. And I always ask people when they go, oh, I never go on a cruise. And I just went, yeah, but you went to an all-inclusive holiday where you didn't leave more than 100 meters from your hotel room. That sounds a little bit weird. And you're telling me that wasn't imprisonment? You were landlocked, and you went no more than 300 feet from your hotel room. That sounds a lot like a small cruise, rather than a big cruise with a lot less activities. And I'm always shocked by this emotional. So there's a huge creative opportunity there, especially because the storytelling is, what does your cruise do? How do you make what happens on that cruise more portable and personal for people not on that boat? I guarantee if you want to get a younger skew on the demographic and not play to the stereotype of a 52-year-old couple going on a cruise, there's a key in this. I really believe there's a play with families in this space, and it's going to be huge, and I do think eventually even younger people. And then lastly, the participation matrix, and then I'll shut up. So the participation matrix, simplest little 2x2 in the world. Unfortunately, I'm an MBA, so I love 2x2s, and I can't help myself with a little bit of graph paper to sketch things out. And this is the simplest way to test how good your ideas are. So if you're coming up with a new creative or content idea or whatever, the question you need to ask is, how will people participate with that idea? And the simplest way to think about it is, participation is a spectrum. It goes from very passive participation to very active. Passive is, I just watched it. I just clicked it. I just sat back, right? Active is, I tattooed the brand to my bum, right? That is the spectrum of participation. And we don't want all the people tattooing, and we don't want all the people just clicking. And the other thing is the whole role of one to many and to many. So one of the things about understanding niche to mass is really powerful to go, all right, how does this message work for all the people, and how does it work for one person? And if you put the two of them together, you get a little lovely matrix. And I tell you, this is the simplest matrix, but when you sketch this out on a napkin and you review ideas, more often than not, you're spending a lot of money to be in the upper left-hand corner to get mass passive participation. You go, oh, we got all those posters. We got the billboard at the airport. Great, we got the billboard at the airport. When's the last time when you came from an airport, as you're going to the baggage claim, you're a little bit grumpy, you have that weird post-airplane smell, and it's just that, you know, it's a little aura of I've been sitting still against a lot of people's other shoulders and arms, and you're like, you just want to get home, right? And I don't know the last time I was sitting there getting the baggage claim and going, that poster inspired me. I'm ready to go there. Now, I want to go home. I want a duvet. That's what I want. All I want is a duvet and a cuppa. And the joy will be is that when you start looking at how someone can participate with an idea throughout the life of a campaign, it becomes really powerful. And to really hammer it home, I always talk about the Arab Spring, and this is just one example. The key thing is that Egypt turned off the internet. Never been happened before. No other country in the world has actually physically gone to the servers and turned them off. And the joyous thing about participation is this, is that while the news went away, while there was nothing to wait and see, while there was a doubt about a change in power, the revolutionaries disappeared because they can't communicate, they can't spread messages. And then I absolutely love this. In less than 24 hours, a guy from Google and a guy from Twitter coded so that you could leave a voicemail on an international number and it auto-tweeted. They coded that, printed it out on pieces of paper, copied them on a Xerox machine, went to the streets, coded it, shared it. In less than 24 hours, 2,300 people had tweeted to the BBC. That's participation with an idea. If you think that's cool, apply it to your business. So I actually map creative work against this matrix. I go, where does that idea sit? Is that there? Why? How do people touch it? What does that mean for my brand and my business? It's a simple exercise. It'll make you more creative, and it challenges your assumptions on what the right thing to do is. And that's it. It's a real pleasure to be here. I'm super excited about the momentum that is going right now. This is about optimism. You know, that's the joyous moment about the travel industry, is that you always get to trade in optimism. So please seize that. Please make people feel amazing, and please be awesome. So a pleasure. I'll take any questions you have, and if you want to follow me on Twitter, it's a lot easier than spelling my name, @ON_JAY, rather than falling on a keyboard. So a pleasure. Thank you. Any questions?
Is it possible to get these slides or see these slides anywhere?
Ooh, good question. I'll have to ask my boss. No, yes, I'll be able to put these on SlideShare for sure.
Hi there, Ed Robertson from World Travel Market. When you talked about the content curation, is that as simple as cutting and pasting comments that are made about your brand onto your website? And then secondly, how do you actually get people to believe that you've not just made them up yourself?
Great. So the good news is if you want to be superficial, it's really easy to buy likes on a Facebook page, just so you know. If you haven't been told that by your media agency, then you should let them know. They should tell you about that. However, if you look at your engagement score after buying those likes, you'll just see it go down and down and down, because it's just a superficial like. The challenge of just curating within your own website is that is an assumption that people will get to the website. So the best model I've found is that your brand site, you are like the editor-in-chief, and you hand select the best content. The key thing to do is actually to retag and repopulate content in YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. What I mean by that is you see content that comes out, you ask permission of the owner to reframe it, putting all the key tags, because YouTube is the second largest search engine in the world, and the more diverse the presence of the videos, the better. The other thing is make sure the embed link on video content is very clear, because Google loves YouTube videos that are embedded. Embed means I post that on a site I control, whether it's Facebook, a blog. Why is that important? Because they keep track of that, and they see that as a social vote. So whenever I pose this question back to brands, I say, imagine you need to put your content in places where it can be voted on socially, i.e. through a view, through an embed, through a share. I'm always shocked when I go to a travel website with a YouTube video embedded and I can't see the embed video. I'm like, what if you inspired someone and they want to put that on their Facebook page? Or even worse, you don't put a Pinterest pin. So I'm just like, have you been to Pinterest? Type in travel, type in any country, and people have pages and pages and pages of inspiration. So that is my thing, is you curate it on your own site, but the real joy is how you make it tied together across the three major platforms of YouTube, Facebook, and Pinterest. Any other key questions?
Thank you. Really good presentation, thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Rebecca Brown, I'm from Travel Editions tour operator. And I just wanted to know what your take is on your, you talked about having your brand purpose, what your take is on having brand slogans underneath your image.
Okay. So I'm going to be critical. So we're going to pretend we're in a creative review session. We're looking over work. So this is where we do FHS. So the challenge I have right now is that from a creative point of view, and I would really self-assess as you're walking around, because often if the idea is the slogan, that's bad news. What I mean by that is clever use of words is, in my opinion, becoming less and less differentiator. So I have no problems with slogans. What I like is when the slogan is the pithy expression, normally the visual image of what you're supposed to operate. What does it mean to choose you rather than anyone else? So I'm not anti-slogans. I'm just anti when the slogan leads and there is no proof behind that slogan. I always say that the quickest way to get profit actually is to put purpose before profit. Because once you articulate your purpose, it actually makes it easier to understand, is that slogan legit? And I'm not saying on a benefit, it's the emotional legitimacy of it. So not against it, but I would actually use really, really hard critique and say, if I put that on another competitor's beautiful artwork, could they own that? Does that slogan, could they easily have come up with that line? And if they could, it's probably a little bit generic, not specific enough. And I love that test, because when you get that slogan right, you'll feel like you own it, but the best bit is your consumers, when they read it, they actually will think it was written for them. No challenges. You guys have been incredibly friendly. That is so, normally I have about 10 people yelling at this point. This is good. This is very, very good. Oh, we got the first yeller. Okay.
Can you discuss again the 3 Ps of innovation more in length?
Sure. So
you went straight to the examples in a way.
Of course. Yeah. So the 3 Ps is, again, for portable, and unfortunately the word that no one likes is potent, but I like alliteration. So I did 3 Ps rather than potent, relevant, personal. But 3 Ps sound cooler. It sounds like that should be an airport innovation book, you know? The 3 Ps to unlock your business potential, right? And the 3 Ps stand for portable, potent, and personal. What I mean by portable is about how fluid an idea is able to move across key moments of time and place. That's the simplest expression I can say of it, is how does it move the idea? So when the idea of an iPad is in your hand, how do I make that context more portable? The use of the cloud is definitely going to be one of the drivers of portability, because it's not actually the hardware that is important as the stuff on it. So that's an example of portable. Potent or potency or relevance is about how empathetically do you connect your idea, your product, your purpose to a person or to a context. This is often highly overlooked. And I always ask, when I see something new, I go, tell me what the objective is, tell me what the message and what result you want. And I'm always amazed how few times that actually gets answered easily. And that's a great way to test potency. The most junior person in the room should be able to go, oh yeah, the objective of what we're doing is this, and the real message we want to convey is that, and the feeling you get and the business result is that. And if they say that, I'm like, done. You got potency nailed. You nailed it. Personal is just as it sounds, which is we are in an era where we feel more like the architects of our own destiny than ever. That, if there's anything that the internet's taught us, is like we're the masters of our own universe now in a way that we've never seen before. Talk to any 22-year-old and you're like, yeah, you may be unemployed, but you still are the architect of your own destiny. And I love that gumption, and that need to personally own ideas is critical more than ever. I always say that the best creative ideas never feel like they were made by an ad agency. You just felt like they were always there, that there were a true human insight underneath, that is the relevancy. That's the moment where you go, this is personal because I actually can own this idea and I know exactly how I participate with it and how I touch it. Those are an expansion of the 3 Ps. It's great for product design as well. If you have a product, oh, it's so good to go to an R&D guy who's used to talking about databases, this, and you force them to express the idea through the 3 Ps rather than their own jargon. Awesome. Because it forces them to reframe it. You're actually putting normally the consumer or the user at the center rather than your jargon and expertise.
You said something about, I didn't quite catch that. Videos are not showing up when you Google, and then you said something about Google is asking why don't people do this. Was this connected, and could you go back on it?
Yeah, so it's about social video. So video is probably the most underutilized in terms of content for search engine optimization. So SEO, as talked in my digital conferences, right? And the reason being is because there's a belief that if you put it on YouTube, that's enough. And the funny thing is if I remember correctly, now 24 hours of content are uploaded every like 30 minutes. Like YouTube is actually physically unwatchable now. You know, a day of content every 30 minutes or so. Mental. Now obviously, as you've known on YouTube, the quality is, let's say, diverse on YouTube. And so just putting it on YouTube is not enough. The use of tags and cross-linking to other content when you do embed links, that is real critical in the eyes of Google, because it says if that content is connected, especially into social places, and people are pulling that content to their own places, Google goes, that's a vote, that's a social vote that this is good stuff, which says Google will go, well, we want to put good stuff at the top. So that's the connection I was making. Most brands, most travel, everyone, they'll just make their YouTube channel and they're so happy about it because the video looks awesome. And then they're like, yeah, but it lives on an island. If you haven't figured out how it's relevant to other places on the internet, it's really hard to push it up the rankings. Same with Facebook as well. A Facebook embed is very, very well valued, same with the Google+. And I think we have time for one more question, or am I over? Oh, I got 5 minutes, oh great. And no one's yelled yet, that's good.
Hi, my name's Eleanor. I'm working in the startup space, in the travel space, and I was wondering, there are a lot of initiatives, online initiatives with quite young people who are just out of MBAs and that sort of thing. Like, I don't know, lots of websites and things where you can actually design a tour, design your own tour where friends share photos, stuff like that. How does that affect more traditional sorts of businesses who are, like you suggested, some sort of marketing tools where, you know, you share and repopulate ideas and that sort of thing. How do then, it's almost a sort of disruptive type of business model where you have people, you know, sort of sharing ideas and creating their own itineraries and that sort of thing. How does that then affect, I guess, the aggregate on Google?
Great. So what's interesting about startups in this space, especially where for a long time, the travel industry has kind of wanted people to just be grateful that they're there. They're like, aren't you more grateful that I can get you to a sandy place? You know, aren't you? Why aren't you screaming above the parapets about how awesome we are, right? And the reason being is because there's a difference between empowerment and enablement. And I think when you misunderstand the difference between those two words, you get into that little bit, kind of the gruffy bit where you're like, shouldn't people care more about us? Like, isn't it cool that we get you to all these places and likes? And that is the enabling role. That is the enabling role. The empowerment one, which is what you're discussing, and this is why it's disruptive and why it's an interesting place to be investing and playing, is it's a natural human truth that you want convenience. You want sometimes to be told what to do, but you want to feel like you have a little bit of control and empowerment. And when you start to craft your own itineraries, I believe it's an expression of a human truth that the business model has not supported, so it's suppressed. I think it's always been there. So 15 years ago, I think the desire to do that is as the same as it is today. It's just now that we have the tools to do it. So I believe it's going to be a niche-ish, but not niche small. So niche that venture capitalists will be interested in niche. And the reason being is that I would say about 10 to 15% of us are in that mindset where we like crafting, or there's someone in the household who likes that crafting action. The neat thing about it is it's content rich. People who are crafters, who want to write their own itinerary through whatever platform, inherently are starting the building blocks of storytelling. And to build that story requires multiple pieces of content. So the real opportunity, the real David versus Goliath moment is for those providers to allow that inspiration to be contagious, where an expression of a changing itinerary is actually the benefit you're selling. Like if I was doing a creative brief for a business like that, one of the stories I would want to tell is how Joanne in Stafford changed her itinerary 28 times, and each of them was perfect. Right? Because that's how it feels. I guarantee when Joanne does her first person, she goes, that's perfect. We're done. We're done. Then the second time she does it, goes, or we could go to the 5-star place. And then she goes, oh, it's done. And then she comes back. And then she comes back. But every time it was perfect. Because she was the architect. And you were the enabler. So I think it's going to be incredibly disruptive. I also think it's going to be interesting how the bigger players will understand that 10 to 15% of their audience base wants that. So how do you allow for that without disrupting the people who just want to buy simplicity? Thank you very much. It's been a real pleasure. Thank you.